So, we are talking about participative management and team working, and this is the continuation of our last lecture. Last time we were talking about that participative management is a multidisciplinary concept, and so number of disciplines actually come and affect the understanding of the concept. So, we were talking about the psychological factors, social factors, economic factors and number of other factors which actually affect our understanding and perhaps contribute to the understanding of participative management. So, now we move on to the same concept, that multidisciplinary approach to participative management. It suggests that participative management is a motivational strategy, participative management is an industrial relations system, participative management is a philosophy, participative management is a technology for improving organizational effectiveness. So, these understandings about these approaches come from various disciplines, and we have already talked about industrial relations system. Participative management is also considered as one of the important types of industrial relations system, which we have discussed, just touched upon when we were discussing industrial relations system. In motivation, chapter on motivation, we have also discussed that participation could have great motivating potential. In fact, when we were talking about theory Y of McGregor, we were talking about participative management as an important approach there. So, in fact, once again we will be talking about theory Y of McGregor, which is considered as an important theory of participation. In fact, some authors have gone to say that participative management is theory Y management, and so we are talking about participative management as a multidisciplinary approach. Now, when we look at the definitions of participative management, again the definitions come from various authors of various disciplines, and this will help us in understanding the concept of participative management when we are trying to apply that to the real situation. Some of the definitions are from economists, some definitions are from psychologists, some are from industrial relations experts, some are from sociologists, some are from the philosophy point of view and the philosophical analysis of the concept. So, overall we can say that these are coming from various human sciences and trying to talk about a concept that is important for managing people today. So, let us look at these definitions. Keith Davis, who is a psychologist, has defined participative management like this: participative management is a mental and emotional involvement of a person in a group activity which encourages him or her to achieve goals and share responsibilities. So, we can see here that the emphasis is on the mental and emotional involvement of people. So, each one of you perhaps could be involved emotionally with some issue, and if you are involved emotionally with the issue of participative management, perhaps that will give us much better results. Alport, again he is a psychologist, he has said that participative management is the active involvement of workers and managers on matters of organizational interest. We move on to Gilmer's explanation, and Gilmer has suggested that conditions should be created by managers where workers they come out with their creativity and reward themselves intrinsically. When we are looking at two things, someone coming out with creativity and then rewarding someone intrinsically, these are the two important key terms here. The idea here is that we are talking about that if you have a system of participative management, people will come out with new ideas, because you create such conditions that people come out with new ideas. So, in participative management, we try to create a condition that people come out with new ideas, and once you have new ideas in the flowing into organizations, obviously your organization will work much better. So, if there are some 50 people and everyone feels like giving their new ideas, obviously organization is enriched by getting these new ideas, and so in turn organization can do much better in terms of business, in terms of its survival, in terms of its growth. And so it becomes very important that organization encourages creativity, which in essence is about participative management. Also, once people come out with creativity, they have so much intrinsic satisfaction that the satisfaction gives them an intrinsic reward. As all of you know, the reward could be intrinsic or extrinsic. Intrinsic coming from within, and extrinsic which is given to you by others. So both the kinds of rewards are important, but extremely important is the intrinsic reward, where you really enjoy, you really feel satisfied intrinsically. And so this is a definition that Gilmer has given to us for understanding the concept of participative management. Participative management, McGregor, as I was talking to you a short while ago about theory Y of McGregor. McGregor has talked about participative management in terms of a formal method providing opportunity for every member of the organization to contribute his or her ideas as well as efforts for improvement of organizational effectiveness. So, that is in essence the idea flowing from his theory Y. And so, we can see that the same ideas that the ideas may be similar in most of these definitions, but then every definition is adding something for us to understand that why do we really need participative management, because this is the way the results are going to be. Then we also have one definition that I have taken from the International Institute of Organizational Hierarchy, that is an organization, international organization, which says that the process of participation, this results from the practices which ensure perhaps the scope of employees' share of influence in decision making at the level of organizational hierarchy. We have talked about that, and just now, in the last lecture, I was talking to you about that the organizational hierarchy, that means the top level, middle level and the lowest level hierarchy. We have people and we would like to involve everyone in decision making at different levels in the organization. In fact, in participative management, the issue of hierarchy and the issue of for example the authority is not that for only every time the orders must from top to bottom. In participative management, in essence it comes from top to bottom and then it goes from bottom to top. Okay, so this kind of a decision making goes on, and so every time the feedback is there for the top management also, and the lower level or even the lowest level employees, they feel satisfied that okay, I am involved in the overall decision making process. So this is what we are talking about here, that in the organizational hierarchy, if everyone gets interested in the organization and gets the opportunity of making the contribution, perhaps that is all about the participative management. And of course, the results we have been discussing, that how psychologically, emotionally people get really involved. Casey Alexander he has done a lot of work in the area of participative management. In fact, he has written a book on, in fact, all others, all the authors that I am talking about, they all have made contributions, they have all written books in the area of participative management. So, is K.C. Alexander's book I am mentioning to you. Participative management gives the scope to the workers to influence decision making at any level or area. So, K.C. Alexander has talked about decision making as an important parameter of participative management. Obviously, it means that we have superior decision making if we are using participative management as a method. Coming from the point of view of sociologists, we find that participative management is considered as Cole, a sociologist, has talked about industrial democracy. So, in fact, participative management, as I have also discussed sometimes, participative management has many connotations in terms of industrial democracy or democracy at the place of work, or distributive justice at the place of work, or team management. So, and so many other connotations we are talking about, including the joint management and things like that. So, Cole has talked about industrial democracy as the important factor, and then he has suggested that industrial democracy represents a problem, a position in which every worker can feel he or she has a real share in controlling the conditions of his life and work. So, we can see that when people feel that they have a share in that making that contribution, again we can say that feeling of involvement comes in again here. Hansen has talked about workers' participation in economic terms, and he says that workers' participation is an economic system where workers have their share in the management of industries or any organization. In fact, when we are just now look after the definitions, we are coming to different types of participative management. You will find that Hansen's position becomes much more clearer when we are talking about some of the even the latest strategies like ESOP that we have. Most of the organizations now, in fact, many Indian organizations or multinational companies are coming up ESOP programs. So, with those definitions of participative management, we have seen that participative management is many things at the same time, and coming from many disciplines and making a body of knowledge for the management as a subject. So, let us see what are the prerequisites for participative management. Prerequisites for participative management are that it should in other words, can we apply participative management in every situation, or do we need some preconditions? Yes, we do need some preconditions like the ability, intelligence and knowledge to participate effectively. We need that if people have to participate, they must have the ability to participate. Then participative management must be relevant to the organizations and the participants' organization. When we are talking about say participative management, we are saying it is a good strategy for managing because we involve people, but sometimes there may be a situation where there is an emergency, and in that emergency situation perhaps we can't make best use of participative management because the emergent situation at that particular moment becomes a challenge for us, and that is why we can, whereas we can use it in a big way during the normal day to day peace time. In some emergent situations, participative management may not be the best strategy. So we aren't saying that participative management is the best strategy all the time. So we have to see what is the situation like. Then participants must be interested in this. If you are not interested, then how can we have participative management? So we have to see that the participants are interested in the whole system of managing, which we call as participative management. Then no one could be should be threatened by the participative management situation. Nobody should feel threatened in this situation. Normally people don't, but then if people feel threatened in the situation, then where is the scope for participation? So participative, that is one of the conditions, that the organizational climate should be such that people come out with creativity, they feel enlightened, they feel light, they feel good about participating. All these conditions become very important. Then managers must have the social skill for implementing participative management. We have talked about in that model that we were discussing earlier, that manager's task is a task that has many activities being sort of embedded at the same time. So it is not only one task of commanding, but it is so much taking feedback, and then trying to adjust various kinds of situations, developing various strategies. So we have to see that managers also have social skills, which is very important. All the participants must be emotionally mature. Maturity, we are here meaning in terms of the mental maturity of managers, that they have the attribute to understand what's the right thing at the right time. Participative management also suggests that it must commensurate with the order to participate in decision making. What is the need for decision making, how much participation is needed in which particular decision making situation. Then the organizational climate must be participatory in nature. If the climate is autocratic in nature, and just by we want to introduce participative management in an organization because people are talking, this is an in thing and people are talking about participative management, perhaps it will not work. So participative attitude has to flow from top to bottom, and that will make the climate of the organization. So we can't say that I will be only autocratic, but I want the juniors to be participative. In fact, one of the interesting studies, Miles, he has proposed his models of participative management, and where he had suggested that managers look for, there are two different models. Managers look for a different model for themselves and another different model for their subordinates. Okay. So for themselves, they want a little bit of autocracy with themselves, whereas for their subordinates, they want that they should be participative. This was based on some of his studies. So here what we are trying to say, that the organizational climate should be such that everyone is forthcoming with participative attitude. Only then we can really work in the area of participative management. Also, the issues that we have to talk about, there should be ample time. as we have seen, any kind of a democratic situation, participative situation, let me make it very clear here that we are not talking about democracy here, we are talking about participation, which is away from, slightly away, even though it is, if we look at autocracy on the one side, democracy on the other one, participation is somewhere in between, even though it may be towards the side of democracy, but it is different in the sense, in participative management everyone has the opportunity of participating depending on the system, the situation, the technology, other things that we have discussed, but the final decision will still remain with that committee, the main committee or the main head of the institution. Okay. So, time factor becomes an extremely important factor. Sometimes we might feel that participative management can go without any time frame. No, time frame becomes an extremely important factor for participative management, because we can't participate unless we have ample time to discuss things. So that becomes an important perhaps prerequisite for introduction of participative management. Then the financial cost of participative management should not exceed its value. If I have financial inputs in terms of training programs, in terms of so many team working exercises, so many other kinds of systems, and I find that the return I am not getting enough, then instead of productivity and quality, people are wasting time in talking, then where is the return? Then we have to see that participative management has to be designed very, very carefully. So, it is not all that that we have the climate where people can just come and talk and then go. No, we want concrete results. So, the concrete results have to be there, and that is why this becomes an important prerequisite, that in view of participative management, in fact that is a skill of the manager to see that we get the results by designing a system which is participative, yet we are not the value is kept in mind, the financial value I am talking about. Then the nature of issue should not be analyzed as sometimes it may also be important that the nature of issues should not be analyzed as sometimes it may be a limiting factor, and then the expectation and willingness of the participants, that becomes extremely important here. I am giving you a very long list of the prerequisites, because any kind of a human system that we are designing is a very complex system, and it is not that you can have a very direct formula to actually apply this. And so, the system that I am talking about is that human system of participative management, rather complex. And so, we move on to the prerequisites. Again now we are going to that social values and the ideology should favor participative management. If in a country or in a society or in a family or in an organization, the social values are different and we want to implement participative management, perhaps we will not succeed to that extent. So, overall the social climate also should be such which favors participative management. For example, if you look at the participative management in some of the East European countries, there the education level is very high, and you will find that most of the organizations are actually geared and well prepared for participative management. The system of work collectives is their supreme body that manages organizations where workers are actually the part of decision making body. So, the social factors become extremely important in the whole idea of participative management. Then the level of technology and method of production, these are also very important. For example, if it is a process plant or the assembly line plant where people do not have sufficient time, if at the time of their work, they can't even waste 5 minutes talking to anybody else. So, their social interaction is not there, at least at the time of working, as against the batch production, where 5 persons are working on a project or an assembly line or on a project where they are working together to achieve some result. These two are totally different situations. So, in an assembly line, if I want to introduce participative management, then my strategy has to be different, that what type of participative management can I really implement. So, that is important. So, the technology also becomes very important when we are using participative management system. Also, the method production we are talking about, the batch production could be there, assembly line could be there, or any other kind of a system may be there. And then the socio-political climate and the prevailing legal system, these are also important in participative management. I discussed that in last lecture. And then we can talk about the conditions of labor market and perhaps the extent and pace of economic development, which are also important factors in participative management. Now, we can see within these parameters, we can see that in India, if we are wanting to introduce participative management, and in fact many organizations have participative management, and many organizations are in the process of implementing participative management. So, some of these preconditions must be met before we are introducing the issue of participative management. In our introduction to the course, and perhaps most of you may be aware of the traditional management system and the traditional organizational structure, and perhaps most of you believe that that is perhaps the only the answer to managing. When we are looking at the strategic management and the new directions perhaps in management, and we are finding that participative management is becoming very important, we need to understand the difference or maybe some kind of a clarification or comparison between traditional organizational structure and the participative structure. So now in the next section I am going to discuss this. Let us see the traditional organizational structure will have, as I was talking to you a short while ago, that top down direction is required, okay, is required for control, top down, okay. But in participative management, you can understand that top organization provides leadership, vision, goals and support, okay. It is not necessary that only the direction. Whereas in traditional management, we have the clear authorities and decision making levels. It is not necessary that in participative management it is very clear cut authority and the authoritative kind of management, but the control is shared, and it is shared with those who influence. So, that means all levels in the hierarchy of people. Then organizational structure, if we look at from the traditional point of view, we find that information is restricted to some key people, which many organizations do even today. But in the participative management system, we have this shared decision making, and the issues are discussed. With most of the issues, I will say, are discussed with people to arrive at the final we can say the solution or final decision. Now, specialization is the key of job or work design in the traditional way, whereas it is not necessary that in the participative management system there is we are talking about that kind of work design. We are talking about that the signing authorities meet legal requirements and not necessarily the operating requirements. And when we are talking about participative management, further the information which is necessary for the operating people has to do with the job and the decisions that they make, and finally the generalizations that we have, these have the impact, the multiple impact on the overall organization and are useful. Further, we also talk about participative relationships. So, the relationships between people or between units, this need to be managed by the appropriate appropriate unit or situation, we can say, or the level, and at the bottom level the organization crisis may be there, okay, which may exist to support the top level. Whereas in the participative management system, we find that the relationship between the units, this needs to be managed by those who need to really interact, okay, and the top and the organizations exist to support the bottom level people. So, there is no sort of a crisis in any kind of a managing the situation. Okay, we are talking about that how to really share the point of view and how to manage any kind of a crisis that we may have in our productivity related situations or any kind of a final organizational effectiveness situation. However, people believe that there may also be disadvantages in participative management system, even though some authors do not believe that there are disadvantages, but since we are doing a course on participative management, let us see. The disadvantages of course are just what we have discussed earlier as some of the factors which need to be looked into. We can see quickly in terms of disadvantages, it is time consuming, people may disagree, people may get frustrated and alienated, people may see this as threat or privacy, and some managers may feel very uncomfortable using participative management because that amounts to sharing their authority, and not everyone can work in groups. This is important. Not everyone can work in groups because they may be individualistic, they may be introvert, and they may be self centered. This is very important, that we are looking at participative management as a group activity, as a team activity, but everyone perhaps is not comfortable because of some of the individual attributes. So, organization must look into this, that if there are people, they may be highly creative, they may be highly intelligent, yet they are not the right people to be part of a group decision making. So, we can take advantage of such employees by using a different strategy. So, not necessary that they have to be members of a participative group, yet they could contribute a lot. So, this is one of the disadvantage of participative management. Obviously, we have tried to talk about the advantages of participative management, that it gives us the higher rate of output, increased quality of product. It gives us absenteeism is an important factor, all of us know, for any organization, and if there is participative management, there is a reduction in absenteeism, there is reduction in grievances, there is improved employee relations, there is greater readiness to accept change, then improved quality of managerial decisions, and of course, ease in management of organizations. So, that is what actually this these advantages take us back to the objectives of studying management studies as a subject. Why are we studying that? In the beginning of the course, if you would recollect, in the first module we were talking about why managing and what are the advantages, and I mean, so long there was no subject like that, but gradually now we find that management is so important. Why? Because we have certain reasons for that, and some of these are common to the overall management as a discipline. So, after knowing the advantages and disadvantages, the preconditions, we still have certain arguments against participative management, because whenever you have a new philosophy, we have a new kind of a method of managing, you will find that arguments can always be there against even perhaps perhaps the best thing also, but then we have to look into that. Let us see that what are the arguments against participative management as a strategy of managing. Functions of management are different from those of the workers. That is one of the arguments given by some authors. That is why participative management becomes difficult to implement. Then existence of several unions sometimes in the organization, that the unions sometimes as part of the industrial relations system. Earlier we have seen that there are unions in the organizations, and participative management is a type of industrial relations system. We have discussed that in the earlier part of our course. So, when we are talking about participative management, unions sometimes do not want participative system to be implemented, because they might feel that their share of we can say authority reduces, or their contribution reduces, whatever be the case. But then we find that there is some problem sometimes. Then the labor representatives, they need to be associated with the management, and sometimes the political interest may be there. So that may become actually detrimental to implementation of participative management. And then of course, this is a repetition. I am saying that it delays the decision making process, because earlier we have talked about that time is an important factor. But if we are doing participatory decision making, then it will certainly delay our decision making, and so that is one of the arguments given against participative management. Then also some people say, we have already discussed some of these issues, that the existing order, they say, is not suitable for participative management. Existing order, when we say, we mean those social values and the social orders. So, this is an important factors, and must managers must treat this as an important strategy, and it should be an encouragement strategy for the employees, and it should not be a strategy for making power and autonomy as an important factor. So, these are some of the disadvantages or the arguments, we can say, arguments against participative management. So, from here, so there are number of arguments also in favor of participative management, which I will discuss in the next lecture.